Samantha stood in the kitchen long after the coffee had gone cold, staring at the small calendar taped to the refrigerator. Tomorrow was circled in red. Lily and Grace. Birthday. She had circled it weeks ago, back when circling a date still felt like a plan instead of a reminder of everything she hadn't figured out yet. The apartment was quiet, in that rare way it only ever was before the girls woke up. No footsteps, no arguing over who got the blue bowl, no whispered giggles from the bedroom they shared, just the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of Samantha's own breathing as she counted numbers in her head that never seemed to add up. $35 in checking, a half tank of gas, rent due in 12 days. She opened her phone and pulled up the grocery app again, scrolling past the photos she already knew by heart. Pink frosted cakes, rainbow sprinkles, plastic figurines stuck smiling into frosting that cost more than she wanted to admit. She closed the app. Last year, she'd promised herself next year would be different. Last year, she'd said the same thing the year before that. Samantha rubbed her face with both hands and told herself it didn't matter. Kids didn't need big parties. They didn't need balloons or matching outfits or a table full of presents. They needed love. They needed stability. They needed a mother who showed up. She could do that much. The bedroom door creaked open. "Mom?" Lily's voice came first, already awake, already curious. Grace followed her a second later, hair sticking up on one side, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit like it was part of her body. They stood side by side in the doorway, identical in face but not in posture. Lily leaned forward, ready for the day. Grace stayed half hidden behind her sister. "Is it still morning?" Lily asked. "It is," Samantha said, forcing a smile that came easier with them in front of her. "Way too early." Lily grinned. "That's okay. Tomorrow is our birthday." Grace nodded seriously. "We checked." Samantha laughed softly and walked over, pulling them both into her arms. They smelled of sleep and shampoo and the faint trace of crayons. "I know," Samantha said. "I didn't forget." "We don't need a party," Lily said quickly, as if rehearsed. Grace looked up. "We can just have cake at home." Something tightened in Samantha's chest. "That sounds perfect," she said, kissing the tops of their heads. "Absolutely perfect." They seemed satisfied with that answer. Kids always believed what you told them, at least at first. As they padded back toward their room, already arguing quietly about candle colors, Samantha stayed where she was, arms still wrapped around air that had already moved on. She looked back at the calendar. Tomorrow was coming, whether she was ready or not, and she wasn't sure yet how she was going to meet it. By mid-morning, Samantha was already tired. Not the kind of tired sleep could fix, but the kind that settled in her shoulders and stayed there, reminding her of every decision she'd made and every one she hadn't. Work was quiet in the way that made time move slower. Too much space to think. Too many moments where her mind drifted back to the calendar, to the red circle, to the soft way Grace had said, "We can just have cake at home." During her break, Samantha sat in her car and ate a granola bar she didn't really want. She checked her phone again, even though nothing had changed. Still $35, still 12 days. She told herself she was being dramatic. People made birthdays work with less than this all the time. She had a roof, she had food, she had two healthy girls who laughed too easily and forgave too quickly. She should be grateful. After work, she stopped at the grocery store anyway. She told herself she was just going in for milk and bread, but her feet carried her past the bakery without asking permission. The cakes sat behind the glass, bright and cheerful, like they didn't know how much power they had. Lily would love the one with the pink frosting. Grace would quietly pick the smallest slice and say she didn't need much. Samantha stood there longer than she meant to. Finally, she turned away. At home, the girls were sprawled on the living room floor, coloring on the backs of old envelopes. Lily was explaining her drawing loudly. Grace hummed to herself, completely focused. "Mom," Lily said without looking up, "if we don't have candles, it's okay. We can pretend." Grace nodded. "Pretend still counts." Samantha sat down between them and picked up a crayon. Her hand shook just enough that she hoped they wouldn't notice. "Who told you that?" she asked. "You always say it, that what matters is being together." Samantha swallowed. That night, after the girls were asleep, she sat at the small kitchen table and folded laundry that had already been folded once. She checked the time, then the bank app, then the time again. There was still no solution waiting for her. She rested her forehead against the table and let herself feel it for a moment. The fear, the guilt, the quiet shame of wanting to give her children something simple and feeling like even that was out of reach. Tomorrow would come, candles or not, and somehow she would show up. She always did.
The morning arrived without ceremony. No balloons, no wrapped boxes waiting on the table, just sunlight through thin curtains. And Lily, climbing into Samantha's bed like she always did, followed closely by Grace. "It's today," Lily whispered, even though there was no one to wake up but them. Grace smiled and held up her fingers. "We're 7. Samantha opened her eyes and pulled them both close. "Happy birthday," she said, her voice rough but steady. "My favorite day." They didn't question the missing decorations. Children rarely did. They accepted what was in front of them and trusted the rest would follow. After school, Samantha picked them up and drove home in silence, the kind that felt heavier than noise. At a red light, she checked her phone one more time, as if the numbers might have changed out of kindness. They hadn't. At the apartment, she pulled a small cake box from the grocery bag and set it on the counter. It wasn't pink, it wasn't fancy, just chocolate, on sale, with a corner slightly smudged. Lily didn't care. "It's perfect," she said immediately. Grace leaned in close. "It smells good." Samantha lit the candles she'd found in the junk drawer, 3 of them. She hesitated, then added 4 more from a mismatched axe she'd saved from last year. "Make a wish," she said. The girls squeezed their eyes shut. Samantha watched their faces, memorizing the way they looked in that moment, afraid of how quickly time moved. They blew out the candles together. For a second, everything felt okay. Then there was a knock at the door. Samantha froze. She wasn't expecting anyone. The girls looked at her, curious but calm. "I'll check," Samantha said. In the hallway stood Mrs. Keller from next door, holding a small paper bag and smiling nervously. "I hope this isn't strange," she said. "I heard the singing." Samantha opened the door wider, embarrassed and grateful all at once. "These are for the girls," Mrs. Keller said, handing over the bag. Inside were 2 cupcakes with pink frosting and a card that read "Happy Birthday" in uneven handwriting. Gasped. Grace's eyes went wide. "Thank you," Samantha said, her voice catching despite her best effort. "I didn't have to." "I know," Mrs. Keller replied gently, "but I wanted to." That night, after the girls were asleep and the dishes were done, Samantha sat alone at the table. The apartment was quiet again, but it felt different now, softer. She looked at the empty plates, the burned-out candles, the card propped against the wall. It hadn't been what she'd planned, but it had been enough. And for the first time in days, Samantha let herself believe that maybe enough could still be beautiful. Nothing had changed. Not really. The sink was still full of dishes. The couch still sagged in the middle. The calendar still hung on the refrigerator with its red circle now crossed out. But something in Samantha had shifted. Lily and Grace ate their cereal slowly,
still talking about the cupcakes from the night before as if they had been something rare and magical. "I liked when the candles melted together," Lily said. "It looked like one big candle." Grace nodded. "I liked when you laughed, Mom." Samantha paused with her coffee halfway to her mouth. "I laughed?" she asked. "You did," she said simply. "After the door knock." Samantha smiled. Smaller this time, but real. She hadn't noticed. She rarely noticed herself anymore. After dropping the girls at school, Samantha sat in her car for a few minutes longer than necessary. She watched other parents hurry away, already moving on to the next thing: work, errands, life. She thought about how close she'd come to believing she had failed them, and how easily the girls had proven her wrong. That afternoon, she found the birthday card again, still propped against the wall. She turned it over and read the handwriting more carefully this time. It wasn't neat, it wasn't perfect, but it was kind. Kindness, she realized, didn't announce itself. It just showed up quietly when you needed it most. That evening, after homework and baths, Lily climbed onto the couch beside her. Grace followed, resting her head against Samantha's arm. "Mom," Lily asked, "can we have a movie night soon?" "Soon," Samantha said. "We'll plan one." Grace looked up at her. "You always say that." Samantha laughed softly. "And I usually mean it." When the girls were asleep, Samantha stood by their bedroom door longer than usual. She watched them breathe, watched the rise and fall of their chests, and let herself feel the weight of loving something so completely. She didn't know what the next year would look like. She didn't know how she would stretch the money or the time or herself. But she knew this: she had shown up. They had felt loved. And tomorrow, she would do it again. Because some lives aren't built in big moments. They're built in quiet ones. The evenings were the hardest. Once the girls were asleep and the apartment settled into its familiar silence, there was nowhere left to hide. No lunches to pack, no arguments to referee, no small hands reaching for hers. Just Samantha and the space around her. She sat on the couch with her laptop open, bills pulled up on the screen but unread. The glow from the display made the room feel colder than it was. She closed it, without making any decisions. Some nights she told herself she liked the quiet, that it meant peace, that it meant control. Other nights it felt like something she had chosen because it was safer than hoping for more. She folded a blanket that didn't need folding and straightened pillows that would be moved again in the morning. Habits formed when life felt uncertain. On the fridge, the birthday card was still there. She hadn't taken it down yet. She wasn't ready to. Lily had asked earlier if they could keep it for a little while longer. Grace had said nothing, just nodded. Samantha understood that feeling more than she wanted to admit. She poured herself a glass of water and stood by the window, watching headlights pass below. Other lives moving forward, other stories unfolding without her. For a long time she had believed this was it, that being a good mother meant putting everything else on hold indefinitely. Dreams, companionship, even rest. But the truth was quieter and more uncomfortable. She missed being seen, not admired, not rescued, just noticed, as a person, not a role. She thought about how easily she had accepted exhaustion as normal, how rarely she asked herself what she needed beyond getting through the next day. Tomorrow would be busy again. Lunches, work, homework, bedtime stories. She would show up. She always did. But tonight, standing alone in the dim kitchen, Samantha allowed herself one small, private thought. Maybe showing up didn't have to mean disappearing. Maybe there was room someday for more than survival. She turned off the light and headed toward her bedroom, careful not to wake the girls. The apartment went dark, but for the first time in a long while, it didn't feel empty.